The worst thing about our house wasn't the yelling. It was the silence after. The kind of silence where you knew someone had just reported you for leaving your shoes in the hallway, for whispering past bedtime, for crying without permission. In our house, love had a condition, and that condition was obedience. Obedience meant snitching. And snitching? That was currency. If you told Mom that your brother didn't do his chores, she kissed your forehead and gave you an extra cookie. If you told Dad that your sister was hiding snacks, he smiled and said, "You're the good one." I used to want to be the good one. So I snitched too. On my siblings. On myself. On anything that would earn their praise. I didn't realize until I was much older that what we were really doing was destroying each other to earn scraps of affection. My name is Maya James, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because the night I saw what they did to my little sister Lily, I stopped being their daughter and became her escape route. It was our usual Tuesday night dinner. Casserole overcooked, watered-down soda, the old TV buzzing with reruns no one watched. We sat in assigned seats, yes, assigned like prisoners, and passed the food silently. That's when Dad asked Lily if she'd finished her math packet. She hesitated, then said, "Yes, sir." But I saw her eyes. They darted too fast. She was lying. And worse, she was scared. A flicker of panic danced across her face. And for just a second, her hand curled protectively around her ribs. No one else noticed, because no one else was looking. That's when it hit me. I used to be her, the good daughter, the rule follower, the spy, until I got too old to be useful and too aware to stay quiet. So they replaced me with Lily, 8 years old, bright, sweet, fragile, and slowly becoming a shadow of herself. Later that night, I found her in the hallway, kneeling by her backpack. She had taken out her notebook, not her school one, but the one she kept under her bed. It was filled with pages written in tiny block letters. Rules. Don't cry. Snitch when told. Smile when spoken to. Tell Mom if anyone says mean things. Say thank you even if you're scared. My throat closed. This wasn't a child's journal. This was a rule book for survival. And we'd all lived by it once. That night I sat in bed wide awake. I heard my parents whispering in the kitchen about Lily's disobedience, about how she needed stricter handling. The next morning, she had a new bruise on her forearm. No explanation, just Lily pulling her sleeve down faster than anyone could see. Except I did. That was the final straw. I didn't wait for anyone's permission. I started planning. One backpack, one sister, one way out. Because if our home was built on betrayal, then I was going to burn the whole thing down with truth. My earliest memory is not of a birthday, not a warm hug, not even a lullaby. It's of my mother crouching beside me at age 5 and saying, "If your brother lies, you tell me. Good girls don't keep secrets." I remember nodding, thinking I was special, chosen. I didn't understand then that I was being recruited. In our house, love was conditional, and the condition was betrayal. Tell on your siblings equals reward. Keep quiet equals punishment. It wasn't written. It didn't have to be. It was in the way Dad ruffled my hair when I tattled. The way Mom brought home extra fries when I was honest. The way the others stared at me, not as a sister, but as a threat. By the time I was 10, I was fluent in their system. I knew the difference between being favored and being used. I told them about broken vases, missing cookies, unfinished homework. And in return, I got affection. A currency I didn't realize I was earning with other people's pain, until it turned on me. It started when I got older. More aware, more resistant, less willing to be their little narc. Suddenly, things changed. I wasn't praised, I was corrected. Why didn't you tell us your sister was crying at night? You're supposed to help us keep the house in order. You're falling behind, Maya. They didn't say it directly, but I understood. I was being replaced. By Lily. She was 8, the same age I was when they began molding me. They didn't raise us with love. They raised us like a network of scared children, each spying on the other, hoping to avoid the next storm. The price of loyalty? Your soul. One night when I was 15, I forgot to do the dishes. I thought they wouldn't notice. Lily, just a toddler then, went to bed early. But the next morning, Mom pulled me aside. Lily said you didn't clean the kitchen. She smiled while she said it. Not angry, just satisfied, like she'd already won the game before I even knew we were playing. That's when I realized they weren't parenting. They were conditioning. By the time I turned 18, I moved out, got a job, scraped by, and visited when I could. But every time I walked back into that house, I felt the pull, the invisible leash. Lily would hand me a glass of water and glance nervously at Mom, as if waiting for approval. She always sat straight, spoke softly, avoided mistakes like they were landmines. Just like I had. I should have seen it sooner. I should have known. But when it's the only kind of love you've ever known, it doesn't feel like control. It feels like home. Until the night I saw Lily flinch. Not just scared, trained. That's when everything fell into place. The notebook, the rule following, the fake smiles. She wasn't learning how to be a child. She was learning how to survive the same where I had barely escaped. And I couldn't let her grow up thinking obedience was the only way to be loved. So I made a plan. Not loud, not messy, just final. Because if love was a trap, then I was going to cut the wires and take Lily with me. Lily never ran. She drifted. She moved through the house like a shadow trying not to cast itself. Quietly, carefully, always waiting for someone else's temperature to drop before speaking. She had the stillness of someone who'd been punished for being loud, and the reflexes of a child who knew that even breathing wrong could have consequences. I started watching her closer after that night at dinner. The flinch when Dad asked a question. The way she paused before answering, like she was trying to remember the right version of the truth. The way she looked at me, not like a sister, but like a soldier silently begging for backup. One night, I knocked on her door. No response. I pushed it open gently. She was curled up on her bed, still in her clothes, notebook clutched tight in her arms like a shield. Her room was spotless. No toys, no clutter, just discipline. I sat beside her, quietly, carefully. "Can I see that?" I asked, pointing to the notebook. She didn't say yes. She just handed it over. Inside were pages and pages of rules, written in stiff, blocky handwriting. Be honest, even if it hurts someone. Tell Mom everything you see, or you're just as guilty. Crying too much is bad. Big girls don't cry. If you make a mistake, you lose trust. Don't make Maya look bad. It gets everyone in trouble. Being good means being quiet. I flipped to the back and found drawings. Stick figures. One always smaller, standing behind bars. Another one, bigger, standing outside, crying. I couldn't breathe. My parents hadn't just turned her into a spy. They had turned her into a prisoner. That weekend, I waited for the perfect moment. Mom and Dad were outside arguing about the water bill. Mark was playing video games with headphones on. The house was momentarily distracted. I walked into the garage to grab some old boxes. That's when I heard it. Lily, crying. My father's voice, sharp, disgusted. "You lied about the worksheet again, didn't you? You think lying makes you smart? That's why you're always last." There was a thud, the sound of something light being knocked over, and then silence. I didn't hesitate. I pushed open the door. Lily was standing near the wall, shaking. My father turned to look at me, mouth open. I stared at him, calm, frozen, documenting the moment with my eyes. Lily's arms were wrapped around her stomach, like she was holding herself together. I didn't say a word, just walked over, crouched beside her and whispered, "Do you want to leave?" Her eyes wide, what looked up. She nodded. That night I packed 2 backpacks, one for her, one for me. No fanfare, no goodbyes, just our essentials, her notebook, and a single page I printed before we left. A map, out of the only world we'd ever known. I took her hand, and this time she didn't flinch. We left just before midnight. 2 backpacks, 1 tank of gas, no rear view, mirror glances. Lily sat in the passenger seat, gripping my hand like it was the only solid thing in her world. She didn't ask where we were going. She just whispered, "Thank you," and held on. We drove for hours, no music, no talking. Just the sound of tires on cracked asphalt and a kind of silence that felt like a scream slowly fading into peace. By sunrise, we were 2 states away. I'd already planned it. Weeks ago, I started preparing quietly. I saved cash from my freelance jobs, opened a new checking account, scanned copies of all our IDs, and researched shelters that didn't ask too many questions. We pulled up to a women's shelter just outside a small college town. I'd called them the week before and said, "I'm not running from a man. I'm running from my parents. With my little sister. We need help." The woman on the phone didn't hesitate. "Come." They took us in, gave us a room with 2 small beds, clean sheets, and a welcome basket with toothbrushes and stuffed animals. Lily picked the smallest one, a bunny, and held it like it was something sacred. We were safe. For the first time in years, we were safe. The director of the shelter, Ms. K, sat with me that evening. "You understand," she said gently. "Once we report this, things will move fast." "I want that," I said. "They're not going to stop unless someone makes them." I gave them everything. Photos of Lily's bruises. Screenshots of family group chats where obedience was praised and silence punished. A video recording of my father yelling in the garage. A scanned copy of Lily's notebook, her rulebook for surviving. My own testimony. Dates. Patterns. Names. Ms. K looked through it all and said, "You did more than most grown adults would." I didn't feel brave. I just felt done. Of course, my parents noticed we were gone. The first few days were filled with missed calls, angry voicemails, and frantic texts from my mom. "Where did you take her?" "You're brainwashing her. You don't know what's best." Then came the pity parade. "We're worried about you. You're not well. Come home, Maya. We can talk." I didn't respond, because I knew what that talk would be. Gaslighting, guilt, promises that would dissolve the moment we stepped back into their house. So instead, I stayed silent and let the system speak. Child Protective Services opened a case within 72 hours. I met with the caseworker, gave my full account. She interviewed Lily separately, gently in a room with bright pillows and soft toys. Lily drew a picture. It was us, in a small house. No bars, no bruises, just her, me, a garden, a son. She smiled when she showed it to me, and for the first time in her 8 years of life, her smile didn't feel like survival. It felt like freedom. That night, as she drifted off to sleep in the bed beside mine, I sat by the window and watched the stars. They looked clearer than I'd ever seen them, and I thought, they raised us to snitch for love, but I raised her to live. The system moves slowly, but when it moves with truth behind it, it becomes a force no lie can outrun. 2 weeks after we arrived at the shelter, we were assigned a social worker named Angela Mendez. Sharp, direct, protective. She didn't ask me if I was sure. She said, "We believe you." And then she got to work. She interviewed Lily again, collected drawings, letters, and voice recordings I'd made in secret for years. Conversations I captured without knowing what I'd ever use them for. She even pulled public records, school counselor notes from when Lily started stuttering in 2nd grade, ER visits for clumsiness that didn't add up. The truth was there. It had always been there. It just needed someone to stop apologizing for it. At the same time, my parents began their counterattack. They told neighbors I'd kidnapped Lily. They told extended family I was mentally unstable and filled with childhood resentment. I got a call from an old friend, someone who used to come over for study groups back when I still lived at home. She said, "Maya, your mom's telling everyone you were always jealous of Lily." I didn't even react, because they had one playbook and it was wearing thin. Control the story, manipulate the sympathy, make everyone else look like the villain. But this time, I was louder. Angela called one day with an update. They just applied to be foster parents. I nearly dropped the phone. "What?" She repeated it calmly. They applied through a private agency across the state line, used a different mailing address, claimed they only had one grown daughter. No mention of Lily. None. I felt my stomach turn. They were trying to replace us, to start over with new kids, new targets, fresh victims. I closed my eyes and whispered, no, not again. Angela didn't hesitate. We've already sent your file to the agency director. If they move forward, we'll intervene. But that wasn't enough for me. Not anymore. So I sent everything I had, not just to CPS, but to a local journalist who specialized in foster care abuse and child welfare failure. She didn't respond at first. But 3 days later, I got a text. Reading your file made me sick. Let's talk. The article dropped 2 weeks later. Front page of their Sunday features section. Rolled up newspaper, The Children Who Vanished. A family's hidden system of silence and surveillance. It didn't name Lily, or me, but everyone who knew us knew. It detailed the obedience for love reward system, Lily's notebook of emotional conditioning, recordings of our parents mocking our fears, the bruises, the fake foster application. The story went viral in our state. A public outcry followed. People began reporting their own concerns. Neighbors, teachers, a former babysitter. Suddenly, my parents weren't just facing an investigation. They were facing a reckoning. Angela called me again. They're being flagged in the foster care database. We're issuing a protective order for Lily. They can't come near her. Ever. I sat in silence. Not because I was scared, but because I was finally safe. The parents who once played puppeteers with their own children now had their strings cut. It happened on a Tuesday, the same weekday they used to call Inspection Day. That's what they told us growing up. Every Tuesday we had to clean, stand up straighter, talk nicer, snitch faster. Because on Tuesdays they said the world was watching. Funny how things come full circle. Because on this Tuesday the world really was. I got the call from Angela at 10:23 a.m. We have them. My hands trembled around the phone. Where? At the foster agency. I didn't speak. I just let the silence stretch as I imagined it. My parents, dressed nice, clean lies in their mouths, applications in hand, probably bragging about how they used to foster informally. They likely smiled when they said I was a troubled adult child who'd run away, leaving poor Lily with them alone. They were probably mid-sentence when the officer stepped in with a clipboard and cuffs. Angela confirmed it. They were still mid-interview when we walked in. The staff froze. Your dad asked if it was a mistake. It wasn't. Turns out the foster agency had reviewed the article after I tipped them off and quietly flagged the application. They didn't warn my parents. They just watched and waited. The moment CPS sent the legal order, the trap closed. The charges? Emotional endangerment, documented psychological abuse, perjury on a foster application, intent to deceive a childcare institution, and worst of all, a pattern. When investigators dug deeper, they found more. Old school complaints brushed aside. Therapy notes from my early childhood labeled concerning family dynamics. A forgotten report from Lily's pediatrician 2 years ago marked inconclusive because no one followed up. Now, it was all reopening. This time, they weren't being interviewed. They were being read their rights. The news broke fast. Local outlets picked up the story. Photos from their application went viral. Side-by-side images with headlines like, "Parents accused of conditioning their children into obedience and lies." Comment sections exploded. People from our hometown chimed in. I always wondered why their kids never spoke. That family gave me the creeps. I babysat once, and the kids weren't allowed to laugh too loud. My extended family started reaching out, aunts, cousins, people who had once ignored every red flag. Suddenly, I wasn't dramatic. I was right. I sat on the couch that night with Lily. She was coloring, something soft, pink, full of light. "Do you miss them?" she asked quietly, not looking up. I took a breath. "I miss the idea of parents who were safe," I said. "But those weren't ours." She nodded slowly. then pointed to her drawing. It was us again. Bigger house. A son wearing sunglasses. A rabbit in the yard. Do we get to keep this house forever? I smiled. Forever and ever. The next morning, Angela called again. Formal charges had been filed. Restraining orders made permanent. And the best part? The judge ruled that my parents would be barred for life from fostering or working with children in any legal capacity. A generational cycle shattered, not by screaming, not by revenge, but by two girls who walked away and never looked back. For the first few weeks after the arrest, Lily slept with the light on. Every night, no matter how peaceful the day had been, no matter how many bedtime stories I read, no matter how many times I promised, they're gone, she'd fall asleep clutching the same stuffed bunny from the shelter, as if it were the only witness that truly understood. And maybe it was. But slowly, very slowly, things changed. The shadows got softer. The house got brighter. And Lily? She started to bloom. Not all at once. Not with fireworks. With little moments. Like the day she laughed so hard at a cartoon she fell off the couch. Or when she asked if we could paint her room sunflower yellow. Or the morning she whispered, "Can I call you Mama instead of Maya?" I cried in the pantry for 10 minutes after that, then came out, hugged her, and said, "You can call me whatever makes you feel safe." I started working full-time again, virtually, building client systems for women-owned businesses. But something kept tugging at me. A voice. A mission. I couldn't stop thinking about all the other kids still trapped in homes like ours, invisible behind honor roll certificates and fake family photos. So I did something bold. I launched a blog, Break the Chain. It started small, just my story and a few anonymous tips. But within a month, it exploded. Hundreds of messages. This is my life. I thought I was the only one. I raised my siblings too, but no one talks about it. You put into words what I never could. I wrote guides on emotional gaslighting, breaking parental conditioning, how to document abuse safely. I started offering Zoom calls with other survivors, especially those with younger siblings they were trying to protect. One girl wrote, "You don't know me, but I followed your story. I took my brother and ran. He's safe now, because you were brave first." I sat with that message for a long time, not in pride, but in purpose, because the girl who once whispered for permission to leave now helped others unlock the door. Lily started drawing pictures for the blog. She signed them with a rainbow crayon and the name Hope. That's what we called her art series, Hope's Corner. Readers loved it. One day, we got a package from a small nonprofit. Inside was a framed note. "For Maya and Lily, you turned pain into purpose. We see you. We thank you. You're breaking chains all over the world." It came with a plaque. We hung it above Lily's desk. She looked at it, smiled, and whispered, "Do you think Mom and Dad see this?" I thought about it. The mugshots, the judge's words, the locked courtroom doors. Then I said, "I don't know. But even if they do, they wouldn't understand it. Because they never built anything real. They just controlled what they feared. But us, we planted something, and it was growing." The courthouse smelled like old paper and forgotten secrets. I hadn't planned on going. But when the sentencing date was announced, something inside me whispered, "Finish it." So I did. Not to gloat, not to scream, but to close the book that had written over my childhood in ink I never asked for. Lily didn't come. She was at school, her backpack filled with art supplies and dreams, exactly where she belonged. I sat in the back row of the courtroom, silent, calm, alone. They brought my parents in separately. My mother looked thin, hair gray at the roots. My father looked smaller, like a man who had shrunk beneath the weight of being exposed. They didn't see me right away. The prosecutor recited the charges: coercion, emotional endangerment, patterned psychological abuse, fraudulent misrepresentation on foster documents. And then came the letters from us. I had written mine weeks ago, a quiet blade in the shape of truth. The The judge read a portion aloud. They didn't raise us to be strong. They raised us to be silent. And when we finally spoke, the world got louder than their lies ever were. I didn't need to speak in that room. My words were already doing the work. The sentence? 5 years probation. Lifetime ban from fostering or working with minors. Mandatory psychological treatment. No contact order. Permanent for Lily and me. It wasn't dramatic, but it was final. And in our story, final is more than enough. As they were let out, my father glanced up. Our eyes met. He opened his mouth. But I shook my head just once. No. No more pretending. No more half apologies. No more reaching across a canyon. He dug with his own hands. My mother didn't look at me. She just stared at the floor. I walked out of the courtroom without a single word. Because the daughter they used to control didn't exist anymore. Outside, a social worker was waiting. Young. Nervous. Holding a clipboard too tightly. I just wanted to say, she began, I read your story. I followed the blog. You're the reason I went into this work. I smiled. Not because I needed the praise, but because I realized something. They raised me to snitch, but I became a witness to what survival looked like, to what resistance looked like, to what healing looked like. That night, Lily drew a picture. It was us, in a bright house with open windows. There was a garden, a rabbit, 2 cups of tea on a table, and above it in rainbow crayon, home. She handed it to me and asked, "Can we hang this by the front door?" I nodded, then knelt down and looked her in the eyes. This is yours, not because you obeyed, but because you're free. She smiled, not because she was told to, but because she meant it. They turned us into spies, taught us that love must be earned with betrayal, that silence was safety, that fear was loyalty. But I took my sister's hand, and we ran through the fire together. And now we don't live in shadows. We live in color. We live in choice. We live in peace. They tried to raise informants. But we became something else entirely. Free.